In the mid-70s, there was kind of an effort to take subsistence whaling away from the Inupiat people, from the larger international community. The Inupiat people always said that there was more whales than Western science said that there was. And the other side of that, my mom was the first executive director for the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. I think that's where some of my advocacy roots came from. But so she, in her mid-20s, was out here running the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission, meeting with senators and representatives, kind of advocating on behalf of the Inupiat people.
Welcome to the Native Edge podcast. I'm Chris James. I'm a little bit lonely today, Michaela. What's going on? No one wanted to do a co-host with me.
I know Yvette was quick to get back to Arizona.
I can't believe it. Well, so Chris James is solo today, which is awesome. Michaela, our producer, is here today, really behind the scenes doing some amazing work. Tell us a little bit, Michaela, about your week in DC. What have you been doing?
Well, we've been recording a bunch of podcasts, so we have a lot of episodes lined up.
That's exciting.
And then a lot of our staff were at Select USA, so they were doing a lot of networking and getting to know a lot of new partners. So that was pretty cool to see.
That Select USA is done by the Department of Commerce. It's the Select USA Investment Summit, where they attract like 6,000 plus attendees from all over the world. So our team is here to be part of that event, as well as doing some other activities. We actually have an office we share with a couple of folks. So we are in our office and pretty excited about that. So this is our DC episodes here at the National Center. How's the weather been?
Very rainy.
Rainy.
And cloudy.
How's that? You don't see a lot of rain in Arizona.
Nope.
Well, of course, I would say we don't see. I'm like acting like, oh, you live in Arizona, I live in some magic place. Either way, it doesn't rain.
Yeah, no, we've been just getting a lot of sun. So
sun and then dust. It's like it rains.
I think it was windy
dust.
by the time we were leaving, or I was leaving on Monday. But yeah.
You know, Arizona has some great fluctuations of temperature. It goes from now into this season, I guess it starts with it's 80 degree one day and then it's 100 degrees the next day. So
yeah, it was really cold. I think it was kind of like cloudy, but then it'll go away. But you'll like see it in the distance and it'll just like come full on. But I think it followed us here because it's like super rainy all the time.
Another thing that followed us here, we've been on the East Coast this is our second week on the East Coast. So we were all in Cherokee, North Carolina, or not all of us. A lot of the team was in Cherokee, North Carolina, my hometown. It was rainy and beautiful there. Everything's green. It was really awesome. The moment we left, my mom called and she's like, we had an earthquake. Have you heard about this?
No.
Yes, a 4-point-something earthquake.
No way.
So yeah, she calls me up. She's like, hey, the house was shaking. I'm like, what'd you do? She's like, we went outside. and I was like, well, is that really what you're supposed to do in an earthquake? She's like, I don't know. We've never had one before. I'm like, I hear on the news they have them all the time. I guess yeah, earthquake in North Carolina a couple of weeks ago. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, but that's not what we're here to talk about today.
No, it isn't.
Today we have a good friend of mine on the podcast today, someone I've gotten to know over the past couple of years, Quinton Carroll. Quinton, introduce yourself and thank you for being on the Native Edge.
Yeah, definitely. Quinton Carroll, I'm the executive director of the Native American Contractors Association.
So Quinton, you and I, we got to know each other. I think it's just in the past couple of years, but I've known your wife for a number of years as well, Kayla. And so I guess it was funny because I had known her through the years when she's been working in the space of advocacy. And then I met you through the years in your work in advocacy and in the government. But I had no idea. This is a funny story. We're at Res, and was it you that were getting, she was getting 40 under 40. You were already one of our 40 under 40. Is that correct? Or maybe it was you?
So I came in the year after she did.
Okay.
Yep.
Whichever event it was, you got, I think I was like, oh, I didn't get it until I see you guys together. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And actually, out here in DC, we get that a lot. It's kind of funny. So the first time we met, I worked for Senator Sullivan a number of years ago, and she actually lobbied me as a Hill staffer, and then kind of a couple months down the road, there's a pretty big Native community out here in DC, and kind of saw her at different receptions in different places, and became friends and started dating, and I'd say she's the reason we're probably still in DC. I didn't plan to be in DC for this long. So.
Well, I can't wait to get into it because what a great couple. You guys have some, doing some great things. So I'm glad to know both of you, and it's been fun to get to know you and talk with you through the years. So let's talk. You have this awesome background. I like to start at the beginning. I'd like to get into the weeds of things. You're from, is it the most northern city in the United States, tell me where you're from.
Yep. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Barrow, now Utqiagvik, Alaska. It's the northernmost community in the United States, primarily an Inupiat community. And our culture is built around subsistence whaling. The spring whaling season is actually going on right now. I grew up with 3 uncles as whaling captains, and kind of as time has gone on, now I have a number of cousins that kind of inherited those whaling crews and are kind of continuing to carry on the tradition and carry on the whaling. I like to talk about, all of our holidays are built around sharing the whale.
Yeah.
The whaling is still done very traditionally in the spring, where you have 5 or 6 seal skins sewed together by caribou tendons with a waterproof stitching, with the whaling crew sitting at the edge of the sea ice and waiting for the whales to migrate by east up into northern Canada. And in the fall, as they're migrating back south, they're hunting again in the fall for the whales. So.
Wow. So you're the northern part of Alaska. So if we have listeners from and watchers from all over the world. I'm actually, for those of you watching, I'm actually putting my hands up like Alaska. So I'm giving everybody, this is what Alaska looks like. But you're way up here in Alaska. How many folks live up there?
Yeah, so there's around 4,500 people in Utqiagvik, but there's 8 other communities that are Inupiat communities that range from anywhere from 200 to 1,000 people up on the North Slope.
And to get there, you can, pretty much plane only, or is there, you could take a boat maybe, but.
Yep. Yeah. So, and that's actually a good thing to bring up. I think the last number I saw in Alaska, 80% of the communities don't have roads coming in and out. But so you have planes coming in and out to get there. Over the last 10 years or so, there's been an ice road that they put in from Prudhoe Bay to Utqiagvik. And over the years now too, a lot of people will have tracked trucks to haul cargo and back and forth. But you can also drive your truck for a couple months in the winter to get up there.
Have you driven on the ice roads before?
I've done the drive from Prudhoe to Anchorage a couple times, but never all the way up to Utqiagvik. So.
We did down more southern Alaska. We spent a week on the ice road, so it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
So let's go back. So you and thank you for the description. I it's a beautiful place. I think I was up there in maybe 2010, just one time, maybe even earlier. But you talked a little bit about your growing up with your generation or a couple of generations of whaling. Tell us more about that and what was that like growing up there?
Yeah, it was awesome. I kind of had a unique background too. So my dad, he was a cowboy from Wyoming, but in the mid '70s, there was kind of an effort to take subsistence whaling away from the Inupiat people, from the larger international community, but also it was the '60s. There's kind of different political movements going on in the United States. So he was a college student at Fairbanks, Alaska, and there was flyers to come count the whales. Kind of the long story of that was that the Inupiat people always said that there was more whales than Western science said that there was, and kind of through those counts and over the years that was proven to be right. And then on the other side of that, my mom was the first executive director for the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission.
Wow.
And I think that's where some of my advocacy roots came from. But so she, in her mid-20s, was out here running the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission, meeting with senators and representatives, kind of advocating on behalf of the Inupiat peoples.
That's pretty amazing. And you've mentioned the term subsistence living a couple of times. Just for our listeners, maybe talk a little bit about what that means. People hear the word, but maybe they don't know what it is.
Yeah, so kind of our culture is built around those who can, those who can go out and hunt, providing for those who no longer can. So you have kind of a whaling crew. They go out and catch a whale, and that kind of their duty to the community is to feed everybody. We have what's called Nolikutak, and it's a celebration of a successful whale hunt. But you have 1,000 people there, and everybody goes home with 100 pounds of whale, caribou, ducks, geese, fish. It's about all the animals that they're hunting up there, and then if you were to go to be up there for Easter or Thanksgiving or Christmas, there's often large gatherings at community centers and churches where that same thing, everybody that's there will go home with 50 pounds of meat. And it's especially important up there, not only in Utqiagvik, but kind of rural Alaska Native communities. You have, I think last I saw, a gallon of milk is $15. If you're trying to buy a Tide or something, that'll often be $60. A gallon of gas is often $8 or higher in most communities. So the subsistence foods are really important to kind of keep everybody fed with the really high living costs up there.
Yeah, it's even the simplest things that make like a A1 sauce. Yeah. If there's even that on the shelf, you're talking $10 for a small bottle. Eggs, $20 a dozen, if that.
Yeah, and going back to where we started and being off the road system, all of the everything that's going into grocery stores is flown in. Mm-hmm. So there's not big trucks driving in to keep the costs down. Everything comes in on an airplane. So.
Yeah. So you grew up in this really awesome place, and when did you decide did you go off to college, or what was the next step?
Yep. So I did an initial semester of college in Fairbanks, Alaska. Decided that was not what I wanted my college experience to be. I think we had 2.5 weeks straight where it never got above 40 below. So pretty quickly on, I was applying to other colleges. I applied to schools in Hawaii, Southern California, and Florida. And the first one I heard back from was Hawaii. So I went off to college in Hawaii. Spent a lot of time at the beaches. And
what a change. So talk a little bit about the Fairbanks. And I remember years ago, I was up there and we stopped at a place called the North Pole. Is that literally, the town is North Pole, right? Is that up there too?
Yeah, North Pole is about a half hour outside of Fairbanks. They've had a longtime mayor named Santa Claus, who also ran to be a House representative and I think he was in the top 4 or 5 a couple of years ago. So,
that desire, I growing up, I had that same desire because I left Cherokee, North Carolina. My first college was not too far from home. It was like maybe a couple of hours, still in the mountains of North Carolina. And I was like, I just sort of like you, I'm like, I love the mountains, but if I don't do it now and move out to the beach, I may never do it. So the ocean called you. So you spent so were you in Honolulu or which?
Yeah, I was in Honolulu. Studied economics and just had a great time out there. I worked as an intern for the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement while I was there, so I got to get a better understanding of some of the issues that the Native Hawaiian community had and get a better understanding of their history when I was out there as well. So.
What a great journey. Who was the executive director at the time when you were at Council of Native Hawaiian Advancement?
So that was shortly after Robin Danner came out. But she was also a longtime resident of Utqiagvik prior to going to Hawaii. So we had kind of family ties, friend ties. One of her siblings is married to my cousin, so it was all those connections.
Those connections. So Robin and I got to know each other years ago. I mean, even before, I think I was still living in Cherokee, working for the Sequoia Fund, and just with her the CDFI stuff, that she was part of the Hawaii CDFI movement and really engaged. What a wonderful person. And one time, a funny story about Robin. We're actually, when I worked in government, I had an opportunity to go to Guam, and I'm on this trip to Guam with all of these, government folks, and there's Robin on the trip too. We had it was so funny. It was just a fun trip. But so. You graduate college. What was your next step, or internship? So was that during college, or did you?
So internship was during college. Shortly after graduating, I went back home to Utqiagvik for it was about 1.5 years. I was a capital improvements project manager for local infrastructure projects on the North Slope. And I'd always wanted to go back home, but my kind of long term, I wasn't sure where I was going to live, so I took a 5 or 6 month trip after quitting my job there, basically until I ran out of money, and moved to Anchorage, kind of with a plan to be there for a couple of years. And to finish that story, I was walking around my native corporation, which I'm a shareholder of, Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, and I've gotten an elevator with Tara Sweeney, who was running the external affairs for Arctic Slope Regional Corporation at the time, and told her what I was doing, and I started working for her the next day. So I'd like to say I stumbled into policy, but I was very fortunate that that all came together and happened. So.
And so working for that ANC, getting what, you're just sort of learning, what policies affect Alaska. What, talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big learning experience for me. I grew up in it, but I didn't necessarily have an understanding of the legal frameworks that ANCs have, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, and kind of the responsibility that an Alaska Native corporation has to their community to provide kind of all the services and resources back to their Native shareholders. So.
And was your office in Anchorage, or did you end up moving away from Anchorage at this point?
Yeah, so in that role, we were based out of Anchorage, and then we'd come out to DC pretty regularly to meet with our delegation and kind of committees that had jurisdiction over some of our issues.
So from there, what was the next phase of your journey?
Yep. So what year was it? So it was 2017 or 2018. Tara was being considered for the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs at Interior, and she pulled me aside and basically told me if I wanted a career in advocacy policy, that I should probably move on. And there was some opportunities in the Alaska State Legislature, but she kind of really encouraged me to come out to DC if I really wanted to do this. And I think I'm on my third or fourth job out here, but it was a really good move for me. I went and worked in the Senate, and I learned how things worked on the federal policy side. And for anybody who's thinking about advocacy, I highly encourage young people to think about coming out to DC. It's, in my opinion, the best networking opportunity you can have if you're working in a field that you are passionate about and want to be in that space long term. I did kind of Alaska Native issues, but also a number of others for Senator Sullivan. And as a part of that job, you have leaders from all around the state coming in to meet with the senator, but you're also the one supporting their issues on the back end, and you get to know a lot of the different people and kind of with a wide range of issues and supporting that community.
It's and working on the Hill, working on the Senate side, you're working with all the other staffs. You're doing some coordination. Were you working also with any other committees, or were you just working with the senator?
Yeah, so I covered what was it? It was Alaska Native issues, housing and homelessness, agriculture, small business. So most of my stuff overlapped with the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, but we weren't on committee. So a lot of that was, at that time, I was coordinating with kind of Senator Murkowski's office and then former Congressman Young to ensure that kind of our priorities kind of advance to the best of our ability.
Yeah. I like your advice to young people. I think that's great. You're like, if you really want to get into this, here's a path forward. My oldest son actually he's doing an internship up on the Hill, so that's pretty exciting this summer. So tell us a little bit more about. I think at least some of us know. I mean, it's still a little, even for me. And we were actually walking through the halls of the one. I guess we were on the house side. Man, that is like a maze. Those buildings are all interconnected. Yeah. There's like pathways and hallways and doors. The security is not as strong as you would think? I mean, you go in, I mean, it's just like going through the airport detector and then you're in. And as we were walking down the hall, you're seeing congressional folks. I mean, it's very accessible. One of our Arizona representatives, Eli Crane, he's just walking down the hall, and we stopped and talked to him. I mean, so, and that was just this week, right?
Yeah.
Michaela, was
Yeah,
this
it was on
week.
Tuesday, yeah.
Eli Crane. We went and had a great conversation with him. He co-sponsored a bill that we were for with Sharice Davis. But so tell us a little bit from your now you're an insider. We're outsiders, but from an insider perspective, what's that journey like? I mean, give us some insight on that.
Yeah, so
nothing like secret or anything.
Yeah, so I worked in the Senate. I want to say it was about 3 years, and then I did congressional affairs, Indian affairs at the Department of Interior, which kind of, again, was it like switching your perspective on your role and what you're doing. And in Indian affairs, a lot of that job was taking incoming letters, calls, and different things from congressional members that were essentially having an issue with programming at Interior for their tribe.
Yeah.
Which
we know a lot about writing letters.
Yep. Yes.
So you were the guy that got him.
Yep. And I mean, it was it's a big task for we were at Indian Affairs to make sure that all those different letters are responded to. There is a lot of bureaucracy on the back end as well.
And just to, I love that point too about the letter writing, because I mean, we over the past couple of months, we have Quinton and I are on a couple of committees together. There's been a significant letter writing campaign, I guess you could say, a lot of advocacy around different programs, different budgets being slashed. So we've been involved with that. But being inside at Interior, just the process. So I might send a letter, or anyone, and this is actually a tool everybody has, but you can send a letter to your congressional person or some congressional person, say, hey, I'm having an issue with my budget getting cut, or maybe I lost a grant, or I lost something, and then or I'm even having trouble reaching somebody. I mean, it could be that simplistic.
Yeah.
Then that congressional person would send that to whatever agency that's happening. So you were the agency guy, and I bet you would. Are they all like negative letters? Or are they all like, hey, we need you to do this, or we need you to respond to this, or we need you to fix this? Is that how most of them came through?
Yeah, and I mean, there's always discussion about kind of tribal programs and other things being underfunded, which I think everybody in our community kind of agrees on. And it would range from like stories that are, I don't know, sad. There is, like, say, an example might be there's a fire going across our reservation. It's been going on for 2 days. We haven't had a federal response. And that tribe calls their representative, and their representative calls Indian Affairs and basically, what the hell's going on? We need to have a response here. But there's also, you need a paper trail, kind of the official government capacity stuff, where kind of an official response is provided back to that member. And so kind of my job there was to help with a really rough draft of that letter, get it to a program expert that kind of falls under their purview. And the politicals were aware of that process that's going on, kind of guide it to the direction that they want to. And then once a number of signatories have reviewed it, then the political will kind of sign off on that, which often took longer than you would think. But there's also kind actually, off the top of my head, I don't know how many representatives of Congress there were with that change that we did, but you have 430 some odd representatives, 50 senators. So there is a lot of letters and different things coming through. And to transition to the part of the job that I really enjoyed was when politicals were going to testify at hearings. I was kind of the person in the background helping them to prepare for those hearings. And we had maybe a dozen hearings while I was there, where kind of supporting and getting them ready. And
that's testifying in front of Congress is often nerve-wracking. I've had the experience. Luckily, I've never really had. I have had some really close friends that have been, in front of the firing squad. And I think probably you were in some of the. I mean, not. I think probably some of the principals that you worked for probably were, getting yelled at. So those hearings are pretty intense. Luckily, my experience is, pretty. I haven't had to deal with that. But how do you, when you're going into like this heated, like some of the stuff you were working on, there was some heated discussion. There were some angry folks. So how do you prepare your principal knowing that, hey, we're going to get these questions and it's going to hurt, and they're going to come at us at every angle.
Yeah, I didn't. No, I was trying to think how much. So I actually had the interesting experience of the last few months of the first Trump administration at Indian Affairs, and then about 2 years at under the Biden administration. So you had a change in leadership, which actually I learned a lot and enjoyed that process. You had kind of the teams change out, you have new leadership come in. But so to your question, I actually saw where in the last few months under the Trump administration, you had the Senate Democrats kind of in control of Congress, and kind of going into a hearing, if you're on the same party in power, I saw a lot of communication back and forth. If you're a Republican and there's Democratic leadership, there's not much communications going back and forth. But I did see kind of after the election that whole dynamic flip.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden you had a Democrat administration and then Republicans pressing. But so on the preparation side, I'd say if you're with the same party, you do have a lot of communications going into a hearing. This is our goal for the hearing. This is what we want to work on together. And kind of the other side is kind of radio silent, looking to
get you.
Yep, I was going to say get the gotcha, or
gotcha.
Kind of catch you off guard.
Yeah.
Which as a staffer, you do your best to help prepare for, but it's pretty hard to do that too. So.
Yeah. Well, we've become so polarized, through the years that it just sometimes seems like, sometimes I just turn it off. When I've watched some of the hearings, I'm just like, man, it doesn't matter which side they're going, just way too extreme either way. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say on that front though, in my time in DC, I do like to say and think that at least on issues that impact Indian country, it's one of the more bipartisan areas in Congress, where there's kind of agreement on both sides on a lot of things. There are some disagreements about kind of things around the edges, but I think kind of like tribal sovereignty, the trust and treaty responsibilities are pretty well known in both areas. So.
And I think that's a great point, because there's a lot of, when there is that agreement, it's hard to get those gotcha moments because we all should be in agreement on these, whatever, three very basic things. Everybody should agree on this. And a lot of the stuff you and I work on, it should be a no-brainer. I mean, so I totally agree with you. And a lot of that feeds in, and you feed into small business development too, even though your organization, which we're going to jump in and talk about, the Native American Contractors Association, you work with entity owned, but there's still triggers of small business. So, what I've seen in DC and in the agencies, usually there's wide support for business development. Where it gets a little complicated is if the politics are thrown into it. And, it's, I had some interesting times. I used to work at the U.S. Small Business Administration, and there was a particular senator who was holding up a confirmation, which they can do. So there was there was a principal that was trying to get confirmed. There's this whole, so they're like, I actually went down and spent like 2 days with the senator in his district and, sort of explained about the agency and what we were doing. And, and I can't say that my work, me just sort of being on that side helped, but it did help finally get that confirmation through whatever we were working on to sort of get him on the same. And it was an interesting time. And I'm sure you have a bunch of stories like that where you sort of you really have to get into the weeds to sort of get someone over on our side sometimes, or whichever side. It doesn't even matter what issue you're working on. So, and it's also cool. I do, there's very few people that have that experience where you're in a front office position, I guess, or in the circle of leadership, and then they all leave, and then you're still there, and then a month, tell me about closing the doors, and then so you were in Interior January 20th, 2021. When the inauguration was happening with one boss. Well, she might have left a little earlier, but then one group of people are leaving and you're still like sitting there. Yeah, tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so you have
changing of administration.
Yep. So you had the changing of administrations. There's a period where you have kind of acting leadership until kind of confirmations and different things happen. But everybody I've worked for, I feel like I've been lucky to kind of work under great leadership. Brian Newland came in as the assistant secretary. You also had Wizzy Garriott as the PDAS. And I learned a ton from them. Yeah. I consider them friends, and kind of really enjoyed that time there with them. And it was, anytime you have a new administration coming in, the first year and a half, are so many different things going on, implementing the new priorities of that administration. So it was a lot of fun to be there to support those guys and the Indian Affairs infrastructure during that time too.
Well, what a great opportunity, and you have even with Tara and Brian, very different leaders, but also, really good people too, working with good people. So how did you then, were you working anywhere after Interior? Did you have or did you come straight to Native American Contractors Association?
I'm going to actually share a little story about my frustrations with the GSA schedule.
Oh, well, we love hearing stories.
I don't know. So to go backwards, so I was a certain level on the GS scale. My title was coordinator, but we didn't have a director in the office. So I was the only person in the office for a couple of years. But so when the director job got posted, internally you're not allowed to jump 3 GS levels,
Right.
even though I was essentially doing the job of the director for a couple of years. And so once I applied for that job and was immediately denied, I was ready to look for a new job.
Yeah.
And so I kind of looked around. I definitely wanted to continue working in kind of the Native American space, and economic development I really enjoy. And so NACA had a job opportunity, applied over there, and within a couple of weeks had joined the Native American Contractors Association as the legislative director.
That's it's interesting too with that GSA, like you mentioned that, just to explain what that, every government employee has what's called like a GS and then a number. So it goes up to 15, and then there's something called SES, which is Senior Executive Service after that. So just give folks what, and that's unfortunate too, because especially you were already in the leadership, you were already doing the job, and but what a great opportunity to transition out of the government into this association, right? So tell us a little bit about what is the Native American Contractors Association. Give us a little bit of background from your perspective, and talk. Now you're the head of the association, is that correct?
Yep, correct. So a little background on NACA. So NACA was formed in 2003. Kind of you have your, what we say are native contractors, but your tribally owned businesses, Alaska Native corporations, and Native Hawaiian organizations participating in government contracting through small business administration programs. In the mid-2000s, there was an effort in Congress, and I'd say the media as well, to really go after the Native 8A, which another term, but
They used to throw in that Super 8A, remember?
Yeah,
I don't know if you ever heard that.
yeah. So in the early 2000s, kind of you had this congressional effort against trying to limit our participation in federal contracting, and there wasn't a trade association to represent the interests of the native contracting community, which is where NACA came in. And it's evolved over the years. We're here to kind of protect our interests, protect native federal contracting, but we also look at different areas where we can improve the program as well, through the legislative process and working with the administration on regulations. Generally just here to help native entity-owned companies get more opportunities in native federal contracting. And just to expand a little further, as we're having this conversation, we're using these terms, native entity-owned, native, all these, but so we're very much unique in that our businesses are created to support a community. You have a tribally owned business. That business is owned by the tribe, which is there to support the tribal members of that community. And it's different from any other government contractor you could think of.
Yeah, and I thank you for explaining a little bit. I think we should probably even explain it a little more too. And I used to, it's always an education about what is even, and there's even a name called entity owned company. And that's what essentially these are. These are owned by the tribe. They're or owned by Alaska Corporation or Village Corporation. Or Native Hawaiian organization. They're managed by that organization, and then the net goes in to do economic development. That could be transportation, that could be schooling, that could be all sorts of things. And I would even say, and Quinton, you can help me with this. A lot of people be like, well, they gotta, when people look at the size of a federal contract, people are like, whoa, that's such a big contract. But to really break it down, if you get $1 million federal contract, from my estimates, the actual net on that contract, that you actually have money to do that economic development, I think it's like 4%, if that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so after you do the work and you build your infrastructure and you pay your employees from $1 million, that 4%, that isn't a lot of funding. So it takes a lot of work, a lot of contracts, and that helps drive. And in Alaska, I mean, that is, in a lot of areas, the only economic driver. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep. So kind of Alaska has its own version of like unique federal Indian law. You had the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, and kind of going back to where I started with a bunch of communities off the road system, very little economic development going on in their communities, but kind of through participation in the SBA 8A program, are able to kind of bring back economic development dollars back to their communities. Just to expand on that, I think and I'm biased, but like the Native federal contracting has been the most successful economic development program across government by a long shot. You have, and particularly over the last 25 years or so, it's been consistent growth every year. It's allowed a lot of different Native communities to diversify their economies, employ a lot of people, and bring those benefits back. But to what you were saying at the start, it is, you do see these dollar amounts, but government contracting is very competitive, tight margins, and it's also, if you're not running a tight ship, if you put in a bid that's too low on the contract, you have a lot of liability on the back end. So you have kind of a lot of experienced businesses at this point providing really efficient services to the government and have strong operations.
And the program, like the 8A program, even our sole source ability for our entity owned, that is not a handout. Like you said, I mean, you have to be able to do the work. So it's not like, oh, here's it's not like that folks are just sitting in some magic office with a bunch of contracts and they're like, okay, hey, you get it, you get it, you get it. That is not how it works. It is very competitive, and you have to, even to get the contract into the process is hard to do oftentimes. So there is a lot of, it's complicated, and it is very difficult. And the businesses, the entity-owned businesses, they have to be top level to be able to do the work. And I think that's something people, if they don't understand, they think maybe this is something that the government's just handing to people, and that is not the case. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, definitely. And those are, I'm with our NACA members all the time, but they're happy to show their CPARs to anybody. Their track records are great. And if you look at, and kind of the conversation right now, there's a lot of conversation around efficiency and different things. If you look at kind of the Native entity-owned rates versus just about any other government contractor out there, the government's getting a great service, often at a cheaper price than other types of government contractors. But to go back to the sole source, that's a negotiated contract between the government and them. And it's become a really valuable tool, particularly for the DoD or military. They need procurement to happen quickly to be responsive of the environment. And a lot of these projects, and particularly in that range, anywhere, 25 to 100 million, something they need done in 6 months instead of going through the competitive process, that might take them 2 years before the contract's even awarded.
Yeah.
And then our military is that much further behind. When a Native entity-owned company can have that project done by the time that procurement would have even started, or the contract would have been awarded. So it's become a really valuable tool. And I think the DoD would tell you that too. It's
I mean, so it's a, I think it's when we talk about diversification in our communities too. I mean, you had mentioned, but even for our tribally owned entities, Cherokee Nation, Chickasaw Nation they're doing some amazing 8A work as well. Forest County Potawatomi. I mean, there's so many. There's so many I could just name, as well as our Alaska Native corporations and village corps. Having all these companies doing the work, I mean, that is job creation, but not only for our own citizens, it's the trickle-down effect. It's creating jobs in regions, nationally. I mean, so it's amazing. So what are some of the, you've been in the executive director job at NACA now at a year or a little less?
Year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah.
And it's done. Congratulations on the growth, that you're seeing. What are some of your plans over the next couple of years? What do you see? What's on the horizon for NACA?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been an interesting year so far. So I'd say our mission is to kind of protect and promote Native federal contracting. So there's been a lot of different things that have come out of the administration. We've had a number of executive orders. There's going to be contract consolidation at the GSA. They're estimating between $400 and $490 billion of procurement to run through there. A lot of what they specialize in is large contracting vehicles. So we need to make sure small business generally is a part of that process. There's what they're calling the FAR 2.0 rewrite going on right now, which is another area where we're going to need to make sure that small businesses are maintained within the regs as a priority. I'll do a plug for the Rule of Two, which essentially, if there's two small businesses that are able to execute a contract, it should be set aside for small businesses. So that's something we're focusing on a lot right now. But so outside of that lane and kind of our programming, NACA is bringing back our Emerging Leaders program. So if you have young professionals at your Native organizations, we encourage you guys to look into that. And if you come out to DC and pack a ton of advocacy into 1 week, and our goal is to bring back kind of young, interested people back into their communities to be advocates out here in DC or in their state for their organizations. And just generally kind of building out our organization. Our strength is our membership. I'm not an expert in operations and government contracting, but I have a lot of people in our membership that are. And our job is to convey that message on their behalf out here in DC. So.
Well, I commend you for the great work. I have had a great relationship with NACA for years, and it is, I love your members and your leadership, and it's just great, the support that our two organizations for a very long time has given to each other. I think it's so complementary. And I commit that the National Center will continue to work with you guys. We are always like sort of taking your lead on contracting, and any and as well as you guys are usually always at the table if we need help on some of the stuff we're working on. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think might have been my first meeting after joining NACA was with you and your team, and talking about areas that we can work together and support each other's organizations. And I know you guys run RES, which is I think is the best networking event of any Native conference, and a a lot of our members enjoy it. I enjoy it, and it's always a productive week when we're there too. So.
Well, it's awesome to have you. Alaska is one of our largest attendees at Res, and it's really awesome. I know an hour goes by like that, so I want one last question before we wrap up. What is it, you are sort of balancing. Both you and your wife are balancing pretty intense careers. Our audience loves to know about work-life balance, because we all sort of fall into this of like, oh, how do I balance? I mean, you're little kids and both working pretty hard. What are some of your life balances?
Yeah, so I like to think I'm busy, but Kayla, my wife, is definitely busier than I am. She kind of worked as an associate for a long time at Holland and Knight. She recently opened her own little firm.
Oh.
So she's pretty excited about that. A lot of Native politics going on in our house. She represents a number of tribes. But on the work-life balance side, it's and particularly not having any family out here in DC. Her family's from Minnesota, mine's from Alaska. We'll often have to be at the same conferences, different places. Over the last month, I was in Anchorage for a conference, in Hawaii for a conference, and then hosted our own conference here in DC last week. And over that same period of time, Kayla was in Arizona, Oklahoma, and New York. And so there's a lot of baby handoffs. And we do, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but so we have a daughter that's turning 4, and my son turns 2 in August. So I think do the best you can. We do have some friends here that help us out quite a bit. But at the end of the day, you got to be there as a parent, be there for your kids, and then also be there for your job and your career. So there's a lot of different things going on at our house.
I follow you both on social media, and it's fun to watch. You often, are playing with the kids. And I mean, it's just, it's really awesome. So I really commend you for that balance. I commend you for all the work you're doing with NACA. I think I'm really excited to see the next evolution of NACA. Mm-hmm. And again, we're just so happy to be a partner and supporter of your organization. And thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, my friends, what a great show today. Michaela, thank you so much for putting this all together. The National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development is a 501c3 nonprofit. Everything, any funds that we bring into the organization, 80% of that goes right back into the work that we do all over the United States and as we expand into different parts of the world. I am Chris James. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Native Edge. Till next time.